Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Wayne's World of Science and Technology. Last night, just as I was going to bed, I got a message. He says, I get what you're saying, it makes sense to me, but one question. Ukraine is striking refineries in western Russia, but gas shortages are in the east of Russia. I get why politically, but Russia must be pulling gas from east to west. How? And the answer is, if they are pulling any gas from east to west, it's coming via rail. That's the only viable way. And to try and explain things a bit better, this is a very generic description of a refinery. Yeah, I know everybody's going to laugh at my horrible art, but it'll do the job. You have here, this represents the entire unit. Parts of the refinery include 2 crackers and 8 generic units. Now, there's also, of course, the pipeline coming in, and there's the ways out, but that we'll just skip them for now. Now, if Ukraine hits a pipeline and blows up, say, the Druzhba pumping station, that causes backups. They're not going to be able to get stuff through, and this happens with any pumping station. This also has an impact from the point of view of when you hit the refineries, there are certain units which are critical. Now, that's why I put 2 units down as crackers and 8 down as generics. Basically, every refinery will have at least 1 fractioning tower or cracking unit. Sometimes they'll have 2. One may be kept offline for maintenance while the other one's being used, or the other one could be an older one that's basically kept around for when shutdowns happen. But they have at least 1 and almost always 2. The generic units basically take what the cracker punches out and then they refine it further to get different materials. So when you want to hit a plant, you go for the cracker. Knocking out the cracker starves the generic units, which means you've got nothing to ship out. So your pipeline starts backing up because you can't obviously pull any oil out of the pipeline. Your refinery can't use it. Across Russia, across the entire Russian Federation, fuel issues aren't quite 100% as simple as all that. One of the factors that is probably coming into play, and I don't know how badly this is the fact that Russia has been losing market share. Now, when you lose market share, you have a choice. You either sell it cheaper, if you can afford to, which you may not be able to, it depends on the situation, or you leave it in the ground. If Russia has started to prioritize leaving some of it in the ground because it's like, hey, we can't do anything about it right now, it's quite possible that some of they're losing enough productive capacity that small bites like the small hits that Ukraine is pulling off are causing major issues. Again, I don't know. This is such an incredibly complex, how should I put it? Logistics is an incredibly complex operation. When you're talking a country as large as the Russian Federation, which is 12 time zones, and they've got, I don't know how many refineries scattered all over the place, because it makes more sense to refine locally than it does to refine it in a central place and then ship it everywhere. If the system should be relatively safe from one point of view because there's so many different systems, but there's been so much stress put on the system over the last little while that it is my personal opinion that the system is cracking. And yeah, I know I put cracker up there, but no, I mean, when I say it's cracking, there are parts of the system that are no longer working properly. Now, why? I don't know. We know that the Russian military has been recruiting like crazy, so maybe too many of the pipeline and refinery workers have been added to the special military operations ranks and are currently getting shot to death. Maybe exodus from Russia in 2022 when the partial mobilization was called included a lot of the people who would have been doing maintenance on this. The problem is we just don't know. There's not enough information right now. And I wish I could tell you more. I mean, I know that the impact is there. I know that Russia cannot ship refined fuels in via tanker. It's just not feasible because they'd have to, you'd have to literally run the pipelines backwards until you got all the fuel through. I know that I'm not explaining it properly. Basically, when you finish pumping one material through the pipeline, you then start pumping the next through, and the next basically cleans it out. But the pipelines that Russia has are all designed to run outwards. So to run stuff inwards from the Shadow Fleet would be extremely difficult. The only practical way they'd have to do it would be rail and road, and road and rail both eat up a lot of fuel. So there's no way that they could make this work, not without having a huge pile of money in the bank. And they've already spent most of the money they had in the bank. And Russia is also now, according to sources in Russia, going into recession. And a recession in the middle of a war is not a good thing to have. Anyway, I probably made a total mess explaining this. I mean, I know it from the point of view of I know manufacturing, I know logistics. I don't know oil refineries. If you want to manufacture machinery like skid steer loaders or forklifts, yeah, I can tell you a lot about that. I can't tell you about oil refiners. I've never worked in the business. I just know the bare basics from reading. And hopefully that made sense. Anyways, if you got something to this, please like, share, subscribe, and all that guff, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.